Madam Chair, we're good to go.
Okay, thank you. So, hi, everyone. Welcome to our April meeting of Community Development, the Community Development Committee. We have, I think, an interesting agenda today. We'll get to talk and reflect, look at what we've been doing, what we're tasked with, where we want to focus. So I'd like to call the meeting officially to order. It says attendance, Kelly, but I think, do we need to do that?
I got it, thanks.
I actually can't see who's in the room. All that comes up is the Capital Region Service Commission logo. Is that
Yeah.
the table? Yeah, normally that's the table, isn't it? I see the owl. There's our little owl. Okay, now I see the table. Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. That's great. All right. So if we have our agenda in front of us, if I could have a motion to approve the agenda, please. And okay, moved by Tim, Director Scammell, seconded by, is anyone in the room raising their hand? I can't see.
Sam.
Seconded by Director Fox, Tim Fox. So a motion to approve the agenda on the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. We have our agenda in front of us. Just want to make sure no one has a conflict of interest to declare for today's meeting. I see no hands, so there being none, we'll just proceed with our business of the day, which is first up, a review of the Regional Community Development Mandate Guide. And that we have that in our materials that was sent along with our materials. So maybe Dawn, if I can turn this over to you to go through with us, or Suzanne, I don't know who wants to lead us through.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Perhaps I'll begin.
Okay.
By way of some introductory comments, the committee members may be interested to know that at our board meeting on the 2nd of April, the board approved your recommendation to fund urban rural rides for the coming year, as well as endorsed the concept of guaranteed basic income, and has directed the chair to write the Prime Minister and the region's MPs, encouraging them to study, investigate, and implement a guaranteed basic income in the country. So very happy to see that. The other thing that they did do was endorse our idea of spending the next 2 meetings not really like a business meeting, but more like a reflective workshop with respect to trying to end the process with a list of targeted outcomes that we'd like to see happen.
Mm-hmm.
In that regard, in your package, there are 3 kind of foundational documents that are in place right now that I think it's appropriate for us to sort of look at whether they're robust enough for us. The first one is the Regional Community Development Mandate Guide that was prepared by the province. Mm-hmm. And in that, it's an overarching, almost academic view of the community development world. And it talks about the areas that we should target for activity and accomplishment. And those are affordable housing, newcomer settlement and diversity, social inclusion, mental health, homelessness, and healthy communities. So beyond that, the fundamental thing that it says that I think that we should be aware of can be found, if I can find my highlighting, on page 11, where it says over time, the goal, and they're writing from the perspective of the province of New Brunswick. Over time, the goal will be have the RSCs be the government's main point of contact for matters related to those functional areas we talked about. It does recognize that the role will evolve and will be integrated with work that requires a lot of relationship and trust building amongst the various partners. So what I think we can take from that is that our area of responsibility and our impact is going to be called upon to be a lot bigger than it is right now. The second document that we have is our own strategic plan and implementation guide. And candidly, I'll say I believe there are a number of challenges in this document. And I don't want to be critical of the document itself or the process that we had to develop it. But I do want to comment that we had approximately 4 months to develop a 5-year plan for community development in our region. And so we did finish with that output, but I think that we can refresh it. I think that we can make it stronger and more targeted. If you look at our strategic plan, it states that the outcome that we're looking for in community development is a vibrant, inclusive, healthy, and connected community where residents feel secure, supported, and proud of their neighborhoods. And that's a great goal to have, but I don't know how to test for that, right? And I don't know what activities we might undertake to improve that. I don't know where we are on that continuum now. So, and then I'd like to comment on the key performance indicators that are listed in that document. And they include, and these are quotes, poverty and food insecurity rates, the number of regional affordable housing projects proposed, and the number of regional community capacity building initiatives completed. So these are important areas, but as indicators, I don't know how we define poverty and food insecurity. I don't know what our rate is now, and I don't know what our targeted rate is. Same with regional affordable housing projects proposed. Well, it's fine to propose them, and we can propose as many as we want, and so we can ensure that we meet this target, but it doesn't talk about what actually gets done. Nor does it talk about what we consider to be affordable. There are a number of competing definitions with respect to what is affordable housing. And finally, the KPI of regional community capacity building initiatives. That's a very broad statement and completed. My own personal bias is that I'm not sure you ever complete this if you're trying to build healthy and robust communities. So from a staff point of view, we have been challenged to support this committee and to support this mandate because kind of don't know where we're going. What we do have running sort of in parallel with us is we have a plan, an ESIC plan through the SIN, and we have a resiliency plan. And a lot of that territory sort of covers what we have generically talked about in our strategic plan. And so as a group, we're wondering how many plans do we need? What outcomes does the committee want to see? And so that's the discussion that we're hoping to have over this session and the next session. And so it's kind of I see it as a free-flowing thing. I will be, at the end of this meeting, forwarding to you a PowerPoint presentation that I've been developing over time. And in it, you will see sort of the most common tools that municipalities and or regions have to address those 6 areas I referred to at the beginning, which include affordable housing, social inclusion, and that kind of stuff. And so I'll be respectfully asking and or suggesting that you take some time with it to consider what we want these outcomes to be. And if you'll bear with me for just a moment, before I sort of hand the baton over to the committee, I'll just show you the beginning of that presentation and sort of what you might expect in that regard to come out later this afternoon. So, you know, it has the obligatory fancy cover page. No PowerPoint presentation without a fancy cover page is worth pursuing. But you'll see here, we talk about affordable housing. Well, affordable housing development, tax breaks, reduced fees, fast track approvals. These are tools that you can use, but they're not tools that are in our toolkit. Zoning and land use policies. They are the purview of our constituent communities, our members. And, you know, perhaps we can influence and have a discussion over how that works in those communities. Partnerships with developers and nonprofits. Well, we certainly might be able to have some activity around that in that area. Subsidies and grants, it's not in our budget, it's not within our wherewithal. And then we look at some legislative items, rent control and tenant protections. That's an area the board could be active in from a lobbying perspective with the provincial government who holds that key. Preservation of existing affordable housing units. Again, an area that may or may not be within our purview. Community land trusts is an area that might be very interesting to us. It might be something that we can assist communities in developing. And a community land trust is kind of like well, the community trust typically owns the land, and affordable housing is built on the land. The owners of the affordable housing own the actual structures, but not the land, that they lease the land. So those are some of the things. And in each of these areas, if we just quickly go to the next one, Kelly. I guess the next one. Newcomer diversity, well, there's a whole other list of tools. So that's kind of my long introduction to asking the community, the committee, excuse me, what outcomes would you like to see accomplished in community development in our region in the near and midterm? So, Madam Chair, over to you.
Okay, and these are big questions. I think it's something we've known as a committee since the very beginning. It's going to be challenging for us. It's huge, and we've been trying to look for focus. And that's one of the reasons we've been doing the presentations, is to see if anything sticks. My sense has been all along, given our limitations as an organization and as a committee, that maybe our best place to focus would be in enhancing sort of the work that's being done in communities, how we as a region can enhance the work that's being done in individual communities, or how we can fill a space that's not been currently filled. I think that the board's support of the Urban Rural Ride program, as well as doing work in a basic annual income, you know, to me, that's a way of us demonstrating, okay, there's a focus and a place that we can fill. But this certainly is a challenge, particularly since a lot of our communities are heavily involved in a lot of this work anyways. And I know that we don't want to duplicate. I don't want us to duplicate as a region work that's being done in communities, but I would love to think that work that is being done, best practices can be shared to other communities. Maybe we're a mechanism as a committee to do that sharing, or how do we identify a space where we can really enhance and make better some of the work that's being done. So that's sort of my thoughts, but we've known we've needed to find a focus. I think we've been trying in our committee meetings to see if something crystallizes and comes to the surface, rises to the surface. Don't know if we've gotten there, and we need to do that while at the same time seeing this huge mandate that's been put in front of us without really any tools not many tools to deliver. So just before I turn it over to the committee, I will say that I know this is a challenge that's being felt amongst the regional service commissions. The Urban Caucus, UMNB's Urban Caucus, we met as recent as today, and that this was a discussion that came up, particularly in light of ESIC and ESIC's work going out and doing the Overcoming Poverty Together, doing public consultations for that plan, trying to figure out how does the ESIC work and the Regional Service Commission work through the community development committees, where does this all fit? And none of us want, like I say, to duplicate, we want to enhance. So with all of that in mind, I will turn it over to the committee and see if you have some ideas and thoughts. So if I can see hands on the screen, but if I miss hands around the table, please let me know, maybe Dawn. And
I guess I would just reiterate one of the points that I brought up in the last meeting, which is that like there are things that can be done with the support of the Regional Service Commission. So like in our community, we need to redo our land use planning. We're in the process of doing that. We're reaching out to the community to get some input from them. But all those things like adding, secondary dwelling units, like those things can be really straightforward. In some ways, like I don't think that our constituents will be particularly upset by that. We'll have to see when we actually do these engagement sessions. But part of where the Regional Service Commission could come in would be helping us to get our plan finished a little bit faster, right? So it would be really nice if we can do these things within our current sitting of council and not have to pass the work off to folks in the next, after the next election, who will be brand new to everything all over again, right? So I do think that there are like those partnerships could help a lot. And so, yeah, we would be happy in the community level to leverage some of those.
Yeah, with respect to land use plans, we've been tasked with completing 10 new rural plans, municipal and rural plans by 2028. And that's a comprehensive process. And we're going to be challenged. One of the reasons we're going to be challenged is the public input process is considerable, and the fact that planners are a very rare breed. There are something like 30 vacancies in the planning world in New Brunswick right now, and we are fortunate in that we have what was a full complement before local government reform. I'm not sure what a full complement is going to be going forward, where we have this big push of work. Other regional service commissions and municipalities are challenged to keep their planners. The cost of planners is rising dramatically, and it's basic economics, supply and demand. We do have a schedule of the sequencing that we want to take over, that we want to use with respect to renewing those plans. We're trying to deal with the oldest ones first. And a complicating factor is that for many of our municipalities, they either include previously unincorporated areas and or are solely unincorporated areas, previously solely unincorporated areas. But we certainly hear that, Amy, and we're aware of that from an operational point of view. I'll certainly use this input when I have my monthly meeting with the planning folks, and do what I can to turn up the heat within the bounds of being doing a decent job. With respect to where does ESIC fit with municipalities, the question that the Urban Caucus has raised, and regional service commissions, and the current public input that's taking place on developing OPT 4. I think that Suzanne can talk to that. She has shared with me a bit of a pie chart, issues that are coming up. And so maybe Suzanne, you could just sort of cover ESIC's plan, what areas it addresses, where overlap might be with the kind of 6 areas that we've discussed, and where we are with that consultation.
Yeah, and Suzanne, just before you do, I'll say, to quote my 21-year-old, with peace and love, like it was said, not negatively. The group we were talking about, Dan Murphy was trying to say that he wanted the UMMB was going to be contributing to the engagement process. And he just said, I want to make sure I'm on side. And all the communities just said, we're wondering how we can contribute too, because we don't quite understand. So it wasn't coming from a place of complaint or criticism, more just curiosity. So maybe you're going to give me something that I can then share with my colleagues, because it just seemed to be a general sense of curiosity. So.
ESIC has evolved through these OPT plans. Appreciating that in the very beginning, talking about poverty reduction, the scope is broad. And therefore the recommendations covered a whole host of different areas of influence for which communities could put forward plans on how they could move the markers to improve poverty or decrease poverty rates. And by the time they got to the 3rd iteration of the ESIC plan, they said, we want to go for impact. Impact requires focus. And therefore, we're going to move from 28 priorities to 4 priorities that the communities themselves can get involved in. In total, I believe there were a dozen different priorities. And ESIC took leadership on doing some advocacy on some specific things, particularly related to social assistance rates and services to folks living in poverty. So it may seem that the current iteration has few priority areas, but that was the logic behind it. The first one speaks to improving our social enterprise environment and supporting organizations that saw a way to use profit enterprises to develop revenue streams to support social initiatives. So they came up with pots of funding to support new startups that came forward to do social enterprise. Particularly on the mental health front, they were opening the door for groups to identify ways to improve access to mental health and addiction services and reduce wait times. So relative to that regional priority, we set specific actions that we thought we could undertake. We listed partners and volunteer organizations that we could collaborate with on these initiatives and set a planned outcome that is not a really strong KPI indicator, I will say. The second key priority for us to contribute on is developing and implementing regional transportation plans to increase accessibility, affordability, and availability of transportation services. And the focus for ESIC has been on building up a provincial volunteer drive service. It speaks to services we need for a specific targeted group. Seniors needing to get to medical appointments. So you can see that the scope of our efforts have been very targeted and small compared to the whole broad mandate of developing and implementing affordable transportation. The third area for priority was working with partners to provide inclusive opportunities for sport, recreation, and leisure for folks on low income. So it's kind of like that low-hanging fruit. Like, how do you help to improve the lives of folks living in poverty who predominantly are living in isolation, who for whatever reason, are feeling disconnected from community. And it's through that disconnection that they lack the resources and the networks to be able to find pathways out of poverty. And so these very specific areas for recreation and leisure has a broader impact in that it's building those community networks, it's building capacity to reach folks living in isolation, and through those new connections, help them find ways to feel encouraged that they can get out of the poverty trap. So again, we have a set of regional plans that we came up for how we thought we could move the marker on that. Again, identified our community partners that we could work with and came up with specific outcomes for that. And I'm just going to reference back into social enterprise to say that in our regional plan, we put in specific outcomes around advancing basic income as a way to deal with improving the monetary situation for the individual. Now, what's interesting is that ESIC has been working on problems doing the poverty consultations. And just yesterday, I received a pie chart that I have to get a sense as to where the majority of the comments are coming from. Regrettably, there's no percentages on it, so I'll just do it in order of priority. The top priority was access to and affordability of activities. Second was access to transportation. Third was housing affordability and accessibility. Fourth, cost of living, taxes, and finances. Fifth, access to food. Sixth, costs related to children. Seventh, health. And then, so I'm not quite sure the definitions and how they lump things together, but just to give you a ballpark as to what the community is presently reflecting back to ESIC through this consultation process.
One of the things that I can sort of add to that priority setting is that committee should be aware that Brett and I are currently reviewing a proposal for a regional transportation study for our region, which will, if wave our magic wand, everything goes properly, will define for us some outcomes that we can accomplish and rank them in terms of priorities. So we have that work coming together on the transportation side. I think I want to avoid us having a hierarchy of plans. And so I'm curious what the committee would think if some other RSCs have taken the ESIC plan and made it their community development plan, or the core of their community development plan. So in our case, right now, ESIC, I'll say on our behalf, is engaging the entire province with respect to what their priorities are. I don't know how you feel about it, but I wonder if we might not say to ourselves, well, that's a test, that those rankings are likely the rankings that we have in our region. Let's not recreate that. Let's use that. Yeah. And as the overcoming poverty 4 is separate from it's a document separate from the ESIC plan, right?
Yes, it is.
Right. Yeah. And so the ESIC, our next version of the ESIC plan is due soon. Am I right?
We have submitted our plan. So
Right.
we're set to carry this through until end of year.
Right.
And in January, we'll come issue OPT 4. And then a timeline will be set for us to respond with our specific regional plan. The other thing that ESIC did this time around that's really gonna benefit the communities is that they're tracking their data based on postal code. Yes, so anyone, Tim, you might recall coming into the meeting in Hamwell, I said, hi, I don't know, I care who you are, just give me your postal code.
Correct.
So everyone that came in gave a postal code. Anyone that goes on and does an online survey gives a postal code. And with their Qualtrics system, they're gonna be able to go in afterwards, and we can ask them to extract what the picture was for our areas. So
I think that would be my, yeah, that would be my preference. I'd be nervous for us. I see where you're going, Dawn, and I like that direction, except that I'd be nervous for us to adopt a provincial plan. I'd be much more comfortable. And I know even when we did OPT2, we could dispel it based on where the consultations, terse it down based on where the consultations took place. I would rather sort of see what the people in our region were saying, and then maybe we could take that and work with that, because I agree, they're doing the legwork for us. They're gathering really important information, but let's really localize it to our region as opposed to province-wide, because I'm sure all of us could say the same working with our colleagues across the province. There's quite a bit of distinction. Certainly, I know even as we're looking right now, the Moncton, St. John, Fredericton in particular are really working closely with social development on delivering services for people experiencing homelessness. The approaches are quite unique depending on the region because we are all at different places. St. John has the most advanced nonprofit sector delivering those services because it had generational poverty. Right. So they're in a different place than our region is as far as we need to build the ecosystem. They're past that. So I just think that that's a one case in point, but we're all in different places. So if we could use those postal codes and take the information from people there and then maybe. So, but what we would then need to do is develop something out of those comments. So we would still have work to do after we receive them, but we'd be further along. What does the rest of the committee think about that? I chimed in first. Are there other thoughts?
If I could add the resiliency lens, we connect with many different levels of organizations across nonprofit business, what have you. And so we go through this every year. What is our committee's focus? What are our priorities? Many of which align with what Suzanne had just presented, with a few others that I think are specific to our region. And when I look at colleagues across the province as well, it is very evident it is regional. It's very different based on each region. So that could be also another avenue of gathering information on what is priorities of those at that table as well. Especially with the lens of preparing in case of emergency.
Mr. Chair, or sorry, Madam Chair. I had two thoughts. So one is that the priority ranking, while, putting things in a ranking does matter. At the end of the day, when somebody has more money for housing, they're going to have more money for food. They're going to have a little bit more money for leisure and health. So I see a lot of those things are really meshed together. And I think maybe we just would want to think about what we can move on the fastest, what we can, not to dismiss that information, but if there's something we can get done in the next 18 months, or there's something that's going to take 36 months, then maybe we sort our priorities out that way. The other thing is in response to the comment that Suzanne had made about ESIC taking on advocacy role for certain actions. I think that I really appreciate that because I'm curious about how many things that we need to move forward regionally and locally where there's legislation from the province that's going to hold us up. And I think we don't have to go into a super deep academic analysis of those things, but I saw in one of the documents that we were looking at today, there was a mention about private companies not taking transportation on because insurance costs were high. But my understanding is additionally, a lot of private companies don't take it on because the Energy and Utilities Review Board heavily regulates transportation. And it's caused for instance, some bus routes to be taken offline when you get into inter-province and intercity and that kind of thing. So I would really appreciate if we kind of knew where those stumbling blocks were going to be and we had an advocacy approach to that. Kind of advocacy on one side and projects on the other. Thank you.
That's a good point. With respect to EUB, there's some talk that regional service commissions will be exempted from EUB oversight for their regional transportation. That legislative change has not been made yet. It may not be made, but it's certainly being discussed at the staff level inside GNB. So that would be welcome.
Yeah, that would be a real game changer, I think, if there was anything we could do to push for that.
Anyone else want to weigh in on this, in this direction? So do we have a general consensus that will take what is gathered, information gathered through OPT4, I guess it is, through the consultations at OPT4, regionalize them to break them down to our region, and then what would happen, Dawn? We would then have to take those comments and formulate a plan, or would we ask if ESIC could guide us? I don't know. How would we do that? Because their plan's going to be a reflection of what they heard provincially. We want to develop a plan based on what was heard regionally, right?
Right. So I think the first step would be for us to extract our region's responses and priority rankings, and then compare them to the province, identify differences. We will have to, in January of 2024, 25, do a new ESIC plan. And we should target that as much as we can to the regional side of things. I think an immediate step that occurs to me now that we might want to prepare for our discussion for next month's process is let's take the existing ESIC plan and resiliency plan and overlay them on the 6 areas that are part of our mandate, and see what that looks like. From a staff perspective, the fewer plans that we have, the better.
For sure.
And I also think from an organizational plan, that's true. And I don't have any need for ownership of a specific CRSC plan to differentiate it from ESIC or resiliency. To the extent that both of those could be inputs into our plan, if not the plan, so much the better. So what I'd like to do, just sitting here now, is say, okay, I'd like us to develop that for the committee to review. I'd like to share with the committee sort of the tools that we've identified in each of these areas. And some of them may appeal to you more or less than others. Some of them you need legislative authority to do, so they're obviously not for us. And I think in that case, as Amy said, well, that will identify our lobbying efforts. Okay, this is the tool that we think we can use, but we don't have the authority to do it, and so it goes into the request that we have to the province. And I think that's entirely appropriate, given the fact that they have given us this broad mandate that was developed in good conscience, quite frankly, by people who don't have field experience the way that we do. So I think a dialogue back and saying, okay, here are the challenges, obstacles, hurdles, and suggestions we have from an operator's point of view that you should consider. I think that's a respectful way to lobby, as opposed to just saying we want.
Anyone else want to weigh in? So would this be like our plan for, so when I look at the agenda, and so the three documents that are sort of guiding our work, would this sort of supplant those and say, okay, this is going to be the area that determines our focus and our priority setting? Is that sort of what we're looking at?
So, yes, so to be candid, the Regional Community Development Mandate Guide is what it is, and it uses the word guide. And so I consider that to be informative, and not prescriptive. With respect to our own strategic plan and implementation guide, I think that, you know, it needs a rework in the community development area.
Yeah.
It was done in a hurry. It wasn't a broad community consultation. It was discussion with mayors, CAOs, and maybe select stakeholders, and didn't have a lot of time for reflection, given the fact that we had to approve the plan in June of 2023. With respect to the strategic priorities session report, that's the January 26th meeting that directors and their alternates attended at the Wu Center. And the output for that was focused almost primarily on housing. And, you know, not surprising. It's hard to help people if they don't have housing, adequate, affordable housing. It's the whole Maslow's hierarchy. After they eat, that's what we need to address. So I'm not surprised to hear that. I think that what we would extract from the ESIC consultation respect to our areas, the existing ESIC plan and resiliency plan, I think that should be our foundational document that we build, the foundational inputs that we build our plan on.
Mhm.
And upon reflection, Madam Chair, I believe that's a really lengthy yes.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I liked
And I
the
apologize
context.
for that.
I like the context. Tim, yes, Director,
So,
or
yeah.
no, Tim, I forget how I'm just gonna call you
just
by
call
first
me,
name.
please call me Tim.
Thank
This
you.
is
I
too
like that.
complicated Otherwise,
Thank
yeah.
Thank
So I'm in agreement with all that we've discussed. I think just one area that I would like to highlight, though, is for me, when I look at affordable housing issues, that has to go hand in hand with transportation. And my big concern is when I look at the more rural areas and poverty in rural areas and the lack of ability to be able to get freely into the city, especially in terms of things like, so I'll use Hanwell, for example, because we have a tiny little market, not really a supermarket, right? We have, you know, a few health services and so on and so forth, but let's face it, the vast majority of people come into Fredericton. It would be great if we could put some multi-units out there. A couple of things stand in the way. One is transportation, because it's fine to put units out, but then it does require that people have a car. It's not serviced at this time by urban rural rides. Those sorts of rides that people need, being able to get into work, being able to go to do their groceries, so on and so forth. So I really feel as though, like, I'm really excited about this transportation study that's taking place, because I do believe that it has to be regional, and that we need a better regional transportation plan, because otherwise, Madam Chair, Fredericton will be dealing with all the affordable housing. Because we can build it, but nobody will be able to get to it and get around. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that to light.
Thanks, Tim. And I think that is consistent with where this committee's been all along. I believe early days of this committee, we said really it's transportation is huge. It's like the gateway to everything, like really affordable housing. But also when I look at the social inclusion, I know I've told this story a bazillion times, but it never grows old. We met with our anti-racism task force. Their number one priority was public transit. So that they didn't, I thought we were going to hear them talk about things. It was the anti-racism task force, not the inclusion committee. So I thought we'd be hearing things about racism. No, they were saying they can't feel part of the community and seen and present if they can't get to places. And so I too would be concerned that I wouldn't want whatever comes out of consultation with OPT and all of that other stuff to interfere with something that we've been talking about as a committee, and that we're on the path. We're working on it, as evidenced by the commitment made at the board level. So I hope that that stays front and center. My sense is that OPT, that's going to come out of the consultations, but if it doesn't, I'd still want us to focus on that. And I appreciate the January meeting and the focus on housing. That is tricky because, you know, the city, for instance, is putting so much work. We've dedicated so many of our own city resources through planning to housing. That doesn't say that it's also not important for the region to do. Potentially that happens through the planning department and is funded in the way that the planning department is funded to help with housing and throughout the rest of the region. I don't know. But I guess I just wanted to chime in on both those issues. But Tim, I'm with you. I don't want us to lose focus on the transportation piece, public transportation piece, or a rural ride or whatever, rural urban ride.
It is a great Rubik's Cube, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you move one, it has an impact on the other.
Might I just share a thought about the process? Like sometimes it's very hard to move forward with actually settling things as a group if we just meet for a little over an hour and then we break for a month and we're,
Yeah.
you know, so we're back at this process for a long time. And I don't know how it would work with other people's schedules, but I wondered if it would make sense, like in May, to maybe combine the May and June meeting together, to take a little recess in the middle and like just try to really get some stuff settled and on paper. And I would definitely, I live a bit outside of town, so I often join online, but I would definitely come in person if we could, you know, really dedicate that time to drafting some new points.
I think that's a great idea. I'm with you on the time. And then we build a little bit of momentum just by the end of the meeting, and then we lose it to the next month. And I wonder, though, given the way the conversation is unfolding, if that meeting would be more helpful when we have more information from the OPT consultations. Suzanne, any sense of when the consultations are going to be done and when they'll have that information that they could share? And then maybe we could line it up with one of these longer stretched out meetings.
The consultation process will wrap up at the end of this month.
Okay.
So they completed the community consultations last month, as well as the survey. This month, they're doing sectoral dialogues. So
Okay.
going to specific 9 different communities across the province. And they're tapping people on the shoulder and they're saying, we need you in the room to have a fulsome conversation. Whereas the public dialogues, the doors are open, anyone could come in. So that's going to complete on the 19th with the session here in Fredericton. And then groups can submit briefs. I believe that closes at the end of the month. So they'll have their data and then they'll start going through it to start putting that all together. I hadn't heard them offer for us to be able to get access to the data earlier. But that's just to say I haven't heard the offer. That, you know, we could ask the question and, you know, it's all been submitted by postal code. So it's should be able to put that Qualtrics system to the test.
Like, should we be able to, like, Dawn, could you reach out? And I'm wondering if by the end of May, middle to end of May, we could get the data and then we could combine the May, June meetings late in May.
Yeah, I don't have any problem reaching out. We'll do that right away. It also has occurred to me that I might be a little bit embarrassed here in that the sectoral session that's being held on the 19th, that came in, I forwarded to our directors. I'm not sure I forwarded to this committee and the invitation. And so I'm going to do that today so that if the committee members want to attend that sectoral conversation at Community St. Anne on the 19th, they can. I like the idea of an extended session, perhaps an afternoon session. I like the idea of trying to get the data out of ESEC early. I have met with them and they talked about what a great partner they want to be, and so let's put that to the test. And you know, make whatever promises we need about not releasing it publicly, blah, 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 and try and create some comfort around that. But I do think that we need to break out of the cycle that we've been at, and that's part of the reason why we wanted to say to you folks today, what are the outcomes? What outcomes do you want? Because we're trying to break out of this cycle of reflection and into accomplishment, even away from activity, but into focusing on accomplishments.
Okay.
Sadly, that's another long yes. I've got
No, that's
obviously
okay.
something to work on.
Hey, I do the same. I get it. I think it's fine. Got lots of information to share. We appreciate your thoughts on this. Why don't, so I didn't participate. I have yet to participate. I would love doing it through the guise of this committee. I don't know, sometimes when you participate, it's nice to know what part of your brain, like what it is you're focused in on. So if I were to participate thinking that I'm really looking for a way for our region to move forward, that might help frame my comments during the consultation, or just frame my listening during the consultation, what I'm hearing, probably more so. So I think it would be helpful if all of us maybe were able to, those of us who could, if we could attend and listen within the context of, ooh, we might be taking what we're hearing and shaping this into some direction for our committee, some priority setting. So if you can share that, that's great. Dawn, if you're able to reach out to ESEC, find out if and when they can share the information, and then maybe that could guide and determine when this committee meets again for a longer session that Amy's suggesting, because I think that's a great idea. And I'd happily, participate in that. How do others feel about that? I'm taking no responses in agreement, just so you know.
The fair tactic.
Yeah. Okay, so is that a path forward for us? Do we get direction out of that? All right. So if no one else wants to say anything, I think we'll move to item 6, which is just a general discussion, which we've been sort of doing anyways, but does anyone have anything else that they'd like to share or weigh in on? Okay, well, I'm not seeing any hands. So we're 12:54. We're almost to the end of our time.
I think
Together.
Amy had.
Yeah, sorry,
Oh,
I just, it's sort of related, but anyway, so I've had constituents reaching out to me and they're trying to find out how to access this $300 subsidy for like low-income families, and it seems to be like some kind of hidden magic is required to find forms and information. No one can find them. I couldn't find anything when I looked. Does anybody know how we can help people access that little rebate?
I will get you information this afternoon.
That would be
Okay.
wonderful. Thank you, Suzanne.
It was admittedly an awkward launch and process based on my reading in the paper.
I know someone who's exceptionally proficient in filling out forms, finding money and filling out forms, and found it extremely difficult. So, yeah, if Suzanne, if you're able to share that information beyond, that would be helpful, if you don't mind.
Oh, no, not Tom.
I've had a couple of people just mention it to me as well, Amy. So if I were to receive that, I could share it. So that,
Oh, same
thanks
thing.
for raising that.
I'll ask them if they've got the guidebook for how to fill out the form. You think it should be.
It's complicated.
Awful. Okay. Well, that's great, everyone. Nice to see you via Zoom. Okay, so until next time, I guess I don't think I need a motion to adjourn, do I? A committee meeting, we don't. No, I
Oh.
can just adjourn. So meeting is
You can just
adjourned.
adjourn.
I'm just adjourning. Meeting's adjourned, and stay tuned for our next meeting, our bigger combined May-June meeting, where we'll be together and have a chance to really flesh out a lot of stuff. So till next time, see you all
Thanks,
later.
everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.